You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's Travis Currah and Sheldon Jones as week 3 of the CFL season is upon us. Sheldon, 7 of the 8 games so far in the season have been decided in the final 3 minutes. This has been a great start to the season, man.
Yeah, this is CFL football. It's exciting. You never know what's going to happen. No one's turning the TV off when there's 3 minutes left like the NFL. This is why we're CFL fans, because that last 3 minutes of the game is like a quarter sometimes, it seems. It's like how basketball games are with all the stupid timeouts and fouls, but it's actually a good thing because good stuff can happen. So don't get me wrong, every now and then you love to see a blowout if it's a team that you don't like getting blown out, but I'd rather have every single game go down to the last second. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love to see it. Congratulations to the Boston Celtics, by the way, on winning that Larry O'Brien trophy. Some of the biggest news this week, Sheldon, already has been the augmented broadcasts. We're finally going to see some of the fruits of the labor when it comes to the CFL's partnership with Genius Sports. It looks like it's exclusive to TSN Plus, so it is behind a paywall, but the fact is, there's an alternate option when it comes to watching a CFL stream, and I don't know if there's any negative way to shake this. It looks pretty cool. The screen looks pretty busy. I'm interested to see how it works if you kind of get to choose what sort of feature you want to watch, but how fast the players are running, the route trees, identifying the players, things like that. It does look pretty cool, and that's why they're using these microchipped balls, right?
Yeah, and it's anything to get somebody to, if you're sitting at, you're having your grandma over, I mean, not your grandma, we're looking younger, but you're sitting for family dinner and your niece or nephew comes by and sees a bunch of stuff going on the TV or the computer when you're watching, that's hopefully going to perk some eyes and get people coming. Maybe you'll be able to listen to it without commentators, because I know there's a lot of people who just whine about the commentators all game long. So maybe you can do that. Maybe there's a feed for in-game interviews that you could just watch the whole game with in-game interview. No, I'm just joking. That'd be freaking terrible.
I'm in for that.
But seriously, I think it's really cool. I understand why it's behind a paywall. The only thing that kind of I wish was differently is I wish it was behind the CFL's paywall instead of TSN's paywall, because I don't remember hearing anything more about this adding any money to the television rights contract, right? So if there's people like me who have been hesitant to get TSN Plus, everyone knows how big of a wrestling fan I am, and if I want to watch 2 out of the 3 AEW shows, I would have to subscribe to TSN Plus, and I haven't done it because I haven't felt it's worth it yet. But I probably am gonna for this, because I want to see what this augmented reality stuff is. So I'm hopeful it works. I hope it works, first of all, because we've had a lot of setbacks with Genius, right? So I hope that we don't see that first game and it says that, AJ Ouellette is running for 100 miles an hour when he's not, right? So I just hope it works and it's not like another black mark on this whole Genius partnership.
Now, your updated CFL power rankings after week 2, I feel like it's been a little bit more quiet, because I think it was pretty consistent with what happened after week 1. Kind of the teams that you thought were struggling continued to struggle. So, I mean, it shows to me that maybe the power rankings were kind of bang on.
Yeah, there was a lot
Except
less noise
a compliment,
this week.
Sheldon Jones.
I'm terrible at that. I don't want people to think I'm being cocky or anything. I'm already a homer, right? It was very interesting because the top 4 rankings didn't even change, right? And one reason is because I don't like moving a team when they're on their bye. Yeah. Because they didn't lose, they didn't win. Now, Toronto still being at number 2, if I did move teams during their bye, they probably would have been down at 4, because Saskatchewan and BC won their games, right? So, but again, continuity shows that I'm right. That's no big deal. We did see Ottawa moving up quite a bit from 7-5. You know what? Because they beat Winnipeg, and Winnipeg may be the last place team on the power rankings because they're playing like crap. But you don't automatically become a bad team. Me having Winnipeg as the last place team on my power rankings does not mean they're the worst team in the league. It just means they're performing the worst, and you still have to take stock into a team beating them, even if they're performing badly. So that's why Ottawa moved up so much. Calgary, they went down to 6. Jake Maier's looking good. Calgary fans have a lot to look forward to here. So it's just they're middle of the pack team right now. That's where it is. And then you have kind of the last 3 teams. You have Hamilton. Now, Hamilton should have won this game against the Riders probably, but mistakes happened. Football gods, whatever you want to call it. But still, they have to be able to win to get higher in the rankings. And then obviously we have Edmonton, we have the Atlantic Schooners, we have the Savannah Bananas, we have
the Shreveport Pirates.
Dead Chad Gable, and then we have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at minus 69.
Nice. Now, if you want to read Sheldon's power rankings, go to twoandout.ca. You'll also find the link there to our shop where Sheldon, that's one more week of 25% off up at
I believe it goes to the 20. I believe it goes to the 25th is the last day there. So 25% off. We've had a good amount of orders. Very, very, very happy about that. And I'm getting my order in today. Yeah, no kidding.
Nice.
I'm getting my order in today because I want that hat. So hopefully soon I can rep that hat on here instead of just this Homer Green hat.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Now, I do want to mention the Bombers. Like, so far this season, last in offensive points, last in net offense. This is something that not many expected at this point of the season. But like you said, teams just don't automatically. I don't think that you automatically get old or you automatically suck overnight. I think they're going to figure it out, and I don't know. Yeah. We'll see if it's this week.
Well, and teams get old, but not every single player decides to just automatically, falls down and isn't able to perform, right? So we saw this. I was actually listening to the Piffles podcast before he jumped on here, and they had a good point that it's reminding me of the 2011 Riders when they went to the Grey Cup in 2009, 2010, and then they had that drop off. 2012 when they had Greg Marshall, right? They had that drop off, and they had too many older players, and then they had to get rid of those players, right? And then they had to rebuild again. And so I don't know if Winnipeg's at a rebuilding situation here, but they need to figure it out. That's the situation.
Well, if you want to compare them to the 2012 Riders, the Bombers host the Grey Cup next year, just like the Riders were preparing to host in 2013. If Bomber fans, if it's going to follow that trajectory, I think they'd be okay winning a home Grey Cup, even if it comes with... I remember that 2012 West semifinal in Calgary, man. Drove all the way to Calgary, icy roads, blizzards, and then Drew Tate, I think it was an 80-yard pass to Romby Bryant or something like that, that ended that 2012 playoff run early for the Riders, and then the Stamps would go on to lose into the Grey Cup, the 100th Grey Cup at home to the Argos. The Argos were at home in that one. We'll start with Thursday night football, Sheldon, where the Montreal Alouettes are 6.5-point favorites over the Ottawa REDBLACKS. The over-under set at 47.5. Now, the Alouettes are going to be pumped up. They spent their first 2 weeks on the road. They're 2-0. They'll be raising the Grey Cup banner, so having that celebration there. But just before we really dig into this, after Ottawa's performance last week, I almost think a 6.5-point line for the Alouettes is pretty generous. It's kind of juicy for the REDBLACKS, I think.
Yeah, I honestly thought it might have been bigger, to be honest, but they were able to beat Winnipeg, so that makes it a little bit less. I don't know. I don't know how to pick this because Ottawa doesn't play great against Montreal lately, and it'll be interesting to see if Ottawa's the real deal or if they just kind of got lucky playing an off Winnipeg team.
Yeah, the Alouettes have a 5-game winning streak against the Ottawa REDBLACKS, but I am under the impression that this is a different Ottawa team that we've seen over the last little while here. I think this is going to be the most physical game of the week. It might not be a 45-42 affair. It might be a 17-11 kind of game.
Yeah.
But there's going to be some hurting players, I think. After this game. So I just think that I don't know if I'd pick Ottawa to win straight up, but I do think there's a good chance that they could cover that 6.5 points. And that has to be a key here for the REDBLACKS. Clearly, they out-physicaled the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You know that Montreal is going to be ready since it's their home opener. They got the banner and all that stuff. But Ottawa doesn't have to travel far for this. And if they keep up that physicality, they got a good shot here at Percival Molson, I think, for spoiling the party a little bit.
Yeah, they were able to keep. I know it wasn't Brady Oliveira, but it was still Johnny Augustine. They were able to keep him at bay. They were able to move the ball efficiently against Winnipeg. Like that's the thing that I think was the most impressive is the amount of rushing yards they were able to get on Winnipeg. Uh, and so Montreal is they're a stingy defense, so it's going to be tough to run on them. But after seeing what they were able to do on Winnipeg, I do have a little bit of hope that they will be able to do it on Montreal. It's a toss up. It could be a very close game. It's just those Montreal games are always they're either very very high scoring or very very low scoring. So you just don't know what it's going to be. But I think you're right. It's going to be a very physical game.
Quarterback Tyree Adams got hurt for the REDBLACKS last year. He makes his return to the roster this week. He'll be dressing as the third string quarterback. And they do get a veteran DB back into the lineup, Justin Howell. I think last week that was kind of the thought. A lot of injuries in that secondary that maybe Winnipeg would have a chance to take advantage. They didn't. So that was a big thing for the REDBLACKS getting the win, and now they got some veterans back into the lineup on that side of the ball, so that will certainly help them out. We got to talk about the Montreal Alouettes and the signing they made in Titus Wall, who's only 25 years old, but he spent the first couple seasons of his career with the Calgary Stampeders, and in 2022, he was actually in the consideration for maybe the rookie of the year. Now, Dalton Schoen ended up lighting up the league with all those touchdowns, so he ended up getting the award, but Titus Wall had the interceptions, the forced fumbles, the hard hits. He had a great CFL debut and looked great in that rookie season. So good for him. He was one of the final cuts for the Calgary Stampeders in training camp, but the Alouettes bring him in. He's going to be on the roster there. I think that's a good addition to that already good defense in Montreal. And Dylan Wynn is about to make his Montreal Alouettes debut on the D-line, which... You want to talk about physicality. He's had some injury issues over the past couple of years with the Ticats, but to get him on the field, that's big, I think, for the Owls.
No doubt. And you still have Sean Lemon who's playing. You still have Darnell Sankey. Like they're adding these just extra physical players, and it's just like, how can Montreal's defense get any meaner? Well, it just did.
Yeah, extremely mean. Like Dylan Wynn brings it, man.
Yeah, and I just hope for Montreal's sake that Titus Wall doesn't come in rusty as it would seem that Marcus Sales did for the Riders this week, because they got him on there. Maybe they got him on there a week early, so it'll be interesting to see if Titus is able to get the schemes and get the communication down that is necessary when you're playing.
Yeah, I don't think Titus is going to be starting. Sales was kind of thrown to the Wolves.
Yeah.
Here, go play boundary corner or whatever they had him at. It almost kind of was, an unfair situation, especially when they had other changes in the secondary. We'll talk about the Riders soon, because I do want to talk about the return of Reggie White Jr. at receiver for the Montreal Alouettes as well. He got hurt in October of 2022 and hasn't been able to see a regular season game since. So this has to feel good for him to get back onto the field. In 2022, he had 53 catches, 722 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So good for Reggie White Jr. for getting back onto the field, and hopefully he can pick up right where he left off nearly 2 years ago. So that's going to feel good for him getting back onto the roster. I'm going to be paying attention to the running games in this one. Walter Fletcher was able to have some explosive plays against Edmonton last week, playing his old team in the Edmonton Elks. I just don't know if there's that same opportunity with this Red Blacks defense. If you like players getting hit and maybe some skirmishes after a few plays here and there, I think that's what we're going to get out of this Red Blacks and Alouettes game on Thursday. But the Friday nighter is a dandy as well, where the Winnipeg Blue Bombers right now 2.5-point favorites over the visiting BC Lions. Here's what I'll say, Sheldon. So far, BC has allowed opposing quarterbacks to look all right. Cameron Dukes looked good in week 1. Jake Mayer looked good last week. I mean, is this an opportunity for that Bomber offense to finally get on track?
It would seem like it's as good an opportunity as they're going to get. Listen, Winnipeg hasn't lost. I don't know the exact how long it's been, but they haven't lost back-to-back games at home since 2018 or something like that. It's crazy. So I don't know if you can count Winnipeg out. However, if BC can put together the offense they need, they can. But like you said, BC, their defense isn't doing the job when it comes to the pass protection. So, or not pass protection, pass defense. So hopefully they can figure that out, because otherwise, a pissed off Zach Collaros is a very good quarterback, and now he's 0-2, and he's hearing all the stuff that everyone's saying about him, and so he's going to look to shut up a lot of people and get a lot of people cheering in Princess Auto Stadium.
Over the last 3 years, since Zach has been the number one guy in Winnipeg, I think one of their strengths sometimes has been second and long, third down, even where you think you got them right where you want them, and then you just crush you with those long conversions. Now,
the only problem there is they don't have the protection that they've been having, because he would have so much time for those receivers to get open, right? And so with the loss of Jamarcus Hardrick, especially, that's taken that away right now.
Now, the Lions don't have that protection right now either. No. I think they've been really struggling in that area, and it's only going to get tougher because another offensive lineman, David Knievel, hits the 6-game injured list. Michael Couture is already there. If those two guys were playing on the offensive line this week and going forward, they might be looking a lot better in pass protection and even running the ball, but that's not the reality. They're experiencing some offensive line issues right now, and protecting Vernon Adams Jr. is paramount for this team. And if you want to talk fantasy, it's really hard to overlook Vernon Adams Jr. How many quarterbacks in this league do you pick and they move the ball down the field, they march and get to the 1-yard line, and then the backup comes in and he punches it into the end zone and your team is left without the points? That's not the case for BC. If you got Vernon Adams Jr. and they get to the 1, it's his job to get it in.
Yeah.
Is it going to happen this week? I don't know. They're also going to be without the big Canadian receiver, Javon Katoy. Farhan Lalji was at BC Lions practice looking like Stanley Berryhill III could get onto the roster and make his CFL debut. So the Lions are experiencing some issues here, and I think a lot of people, me included, thought and think that this is probably the Western Final preview. The question just being, where is that Western Final going to be played? If it was tomorrow, it would be in Regina, but we got 16 regular season games to play. Winnipeg, not healthy either. Brady Oliveira still hasn't practiced, so he's officially listed as questionable for Friday's game against the Lions. I mean, I think Buck Pierce needs to show more trust in Johnny Augustine if he's going to get the start on Friday, because it didn't really feel like he had that trust at times last week against Ottawa.
Yeah, definitely didn't have the full workload that Brady Oliveira would normally have. Like I said last week, he's shown in the preseason that he can be that dynamic, lightning quick running back, and if you can have that in this league and you can be a Canadian, that's a huge thing to have, especially when he's backing up Brady Oliveira. You gotta trust it. It's just, you can't, just because a player goes down, yes, you will have to make changes in your game plan, but your core game plan has to stay the same. You have to run to be able to set up the pass. That's a staple pretty much in 80%, 90% of the offenses in the CFL. You have to run to set up the pass. But if you go away and you don't trust that backup running back, then they're just gonna sit on all the receivers and play man-to-man, and you're not gonna get anywhere, right? So he's got to trust the kid if he's in there again.
Yeah, and maybe it went deeper than just the running back. They didn't like the matchup they were seeing with their offensive line going against Ottawa's front, and they would rather just, put the ball in Zach's hands and try to make a play, but that didn't work either. And if we're going to talk BC injuries, got to be fair, because Winnipeg, they might be without some pretty critical players as well. Linebacker Kyrie Wilson, he's limited, dealing with an ankle injury, and their top cover man, Diedrich Nichols, an all-star, dealing with a shoulder injury that hasn't practiced all week. He's questionable. So Alex Hollins was making some circus catches for the Lions last week against Calgary. He might be one to watch for this week. And the Lions do get Ciante Evans back. He's been dealing with the personal manager, or a matter, a veteran in the CFL. And then Patrice Rene was dealing with an ankle injury. Didn't practice Tuesday, back practicing Wednesday. So for the Bombers, I mean, for my fantasy lineup, I actually think this week I've been shuffling the cards 14 times already. At some point, I just got to walk away, and it is what it is. But Carrick Wheatfall had 111 yards last week for the Bombers on 3 catches. And we talk about next man up a lot of times with Winnipeg. Literally, they put another player in and nothing changes. And that's what it kind of seemed like with Wheatfall last week. Kenny the King's out. Wheatfall steps in. They gave him several targets, just shy of double digits. He has 100 yards in his first game. Maybe he's going to be having another good one here at Princess Auto Stadium as the Bombers look to get back into the win column here. But both teams seem vulnerable. And these Bombers, I just can't imagine 0-3. If that happens,
it'd be great, but I can't imagine it either.
I guess crazier things have happened in the CFL, and Vernon Adams Jr. is putting so much pressure on himself this year.
He'll be running around like a chicken with his head cut off this game.
He wants to get a win in Winnipeg.
Oh, yeah.
So Friday Night Football, it might be this is one where I could see it being a high scoring one. And
I could too.
The over-under is set at 51.5. It's the highest line of the week when it comes to that. So this very well could be Friday Night Lights. I can't wait to see that Friday night game. All right, man. We go to Toronto on Saturday. It is the Pride game at BMO Field, the annual celebration showing that everybody is welcome into the stadium and everybody is welcome to watch and take part in CFL football. But, man, Toronto, they got DJ Cosmic Cat and a Vogue dance crew performing at the Shipyard. They've got... Well, they got rainbow fireworks, man. I mean, how can you not like that? And they're going to have a Pride-themed cocktail as well. It just looks like it's going to be a good time in Toronto at BMO Field, which those fans that come out, it's already a good time, and they're going to make it a good time again this Saturday, Sheldon.
Oh, yeah, and from what I hear, I haven't been able to experience myself, but the tailgating there is phenomenal. So I assume that a lot of the tailgates are going to have a little Pride theme to them too, and getting in on the party. And I'd love to be there for this game. It sounds amazing.
The Argos are 5.5-point favorites as the Argos West are in town. This is like almost a reunion. There are a lot of former Argos with the green and gold, including quarterback McLeod Bethel-Thompson, returner Javon Leake, receiver Curly Gittins Jr., kicker Boris Beatty, DB Josh Haggerty, offensive lineman Shane Richards. There's probably a few that I'm missing here, but yeah. The Elks... I feel like they need a win. Of course they do. They've needed a win for a while. I don't know. I think they could upset. It's not going to be easy. I mean, the last two games they lost by, a score. Maybe they get within that score, but I just don't know if they'll be able to create the time for McLeod Bethel-Thompson, because I think we know that the Argos secondary might be the weakness, but having the time to take advantage of it, that's a whole nother question, man.
Yeah, the thing about McBeth is he gets the ball really quick. So I guess the way that I'm kind of looking at it is you saw when Toronto played BC, their D-line just attacked the O-line and they caused Vernon Adams a lot of trouble. So if that happens again, it just depends on if Edmonton's O-line is better than BC's O-line, basically. But McLeod Bethel-Thompson's going to get the ball out a lot quicker than Vernon Adams would. So he's going to want to play really good coming back to Toronto. I know that for sure. All of them are. So this could be the upset special of the week. I think it's just going to be a great game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is going to be a good one, too. I think a lot of people are probably writing off Edmonton a little bit, but which is easy to do. And I can't really blame them.
But like you said, they have lost by single scores. Like a play here and there differently, they could be 2-0. So I think maybe the Elks do deserve a little bit more respect, but I think we're seeing a level of parity in this league that we haven't seen in a long time, because, every team could win on any given night, I think, and it hasn't been like that for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, for the last few years, it's kind of been Edmonton and Ottawa, like just going out there and
bingo
getting
space.
crushed. Yeah. I don't think that is the case here, but I really just I respect Toronto's front, and I don't know if if this is the game they're going to be able to get Kevin Brown going. Like, it just really seems that they need to feed it to 87. I know there is options, and the Elks receiving core has options. And Dylan Mitchell, they've been looking his way a lot. Curly Gittins obviously has the past and the chemistry with McLeod Bethel Thompson. But 87, man, let him feast and give him 17 targets, and I'm sure something. And I'm saying that because he is on my fantasy roster so far this week. But hey, those Argos are dealing with some issues as well. Tavares Daniels hasn't been at practice, and hey, if they're not able to practice after a bye week, you think they're probably dealing with a little bit of something. Arimalade, the D-line, Monster, he hasn't practiced this week, dealing with an ankle issue. That being said, DeMonte Coxey missed week 1 for the Argos. He looks like he'd be able to return this week at receiver. He did return to practice on Tuesday. So we know that the Argos, though, have so much depth at D-line.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the way they get after quarterbacks and running backs, and with Jared Brinkman poised to have a monster season at D tackle, the Elks are going to have their hands full in that regard. And I just feel like the Argos offense is very steady. They spread the ball around, and I actually think this might be a nice game for Kadeem Carey. He looked good in week 1. He looks fresh. He looks like he's got something to prove here. And the Elks got their hands full. The Argos are going to be playing, I think, clean football. They don't make many mistakes. How can the Elks not be their own worst enemy? Sometimes it seems like they are the ones holding themselves back more than anything else.
Yeah, personnel, coach, like everything. But the one thing that maybe they have on their side is they're playing a young quarterback, and Chris Jones has a very I won't say intricate defense, and it can confuse some quarterbacks. So maybe that's one thing that Edmonton has in their back pocket that they can try to exploit. Give Duke some different looks that he might not be used to seeing. Create pressure on him, confuse him. But he looked really good already against BC, and I don't know. I'm scratching, trying to find what things that Edmonton can use and have, but it's hard.
Through 2 games, the Elks have given up the most offensive touchdowns. BC is second most, and Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Hamilton, Calgary are all tied for third. It's only after 2 games, but Edmonton, if they can limit that big play, maybe they are in good shape or okay shape against the Argos, but it's a tough test, obviously. The Sunday Nighter, it's a rematch of Ticats Riders, this time in Regina. Now, the Riders won by 3. They'll have to win by 3 to cover the spread this week because the Riders are 2.5-point favorites. Those Hamilton Tiger Cats lead the CFL in net offense right now. They're the only team that has over 800 yards. In fact, 869 yards so far. They lead the league in average yards per play. They lead the league in the average gain on first down and average gain per rush, 6.2 yards a carry.
They also lead the league in White touchdown drops.
Again, the mistakes that they've made have limited their success when getting wins so far in this young season. I can't see Tim White struggling like this all year. I don't know. This kind of seems like maybe redemption is on the horizon for number 12.
It could be. This is going to be a tough place to do it, though. You have the Riders coming home after being starting 2-0 for the first time ever in franchise history, with 2 wins to start the season on the road.
That's pretty wild.
It's 114 years. This is the first time it's ever happened. So they're riding that high, and ticket sales have been actually pretty decent. I've been keeping track to see. It looks like there's around 4,000 or 5,000 seats left. So hopefully they can sell some of those. I think it looks like it's gonna be 28 and sunny on Sunday, so perfect weather. But
that's a little toasty for me, man.
Well, it's starting at 5 o'clock. It's starting at 5 o'clock, so It's not going to be 28. And we're in the shade.
Nice.
But so I don't know if it's going to be that game for Tim White, because it's going to be loud in there. But also, the opposing team wants to come in and shut those people up. So maybe it is. But I honestly think that the Riders are going to pummel Hamilton. And I don't have those good, I haven't had that thought about the Riders in a long time, but I have a really good feeling, and I don't know why, about this game.
Bo has that experience going into Regina and being able to weather the early storm. I think if the Ticats get off to a good start, then that will go a long way. The Riders just can't afford to have another bad first half and continue to take the penalties they have. They actually lead the league in special teams penalties, not in a good way. It seems like
Barry Alford knows that.
He's got to be frustrated.
Yeah.
When you're running 75 yards to gain 40, and then they get called back with illegal blocks or holding or whatever. The Riders need to stop that in a hurry. But I see the injuries that the Riders are dealing with on the O-line. That's trouble. And look, dealing with it at this point of the season is probably better than October, but Peter Godber hasn't practiced. It's early in the week. This is a Sunday nighter. He's dealing with something personal. Jamarcus Hardrick wasn't practicing Wednesday, dealing with an ankle injury. AJ Ouellette, they gave him the day off as well, dealing with a leg injury. And veteran Philip Blake is out long term. They're calling it a thigh injury. So, there's 3 whole linemen. Now, 2 of them, maybe they're just giving them the day off on Wednesday, but that's a situation to watch, I think.
For sure. Just before we got on here too, when I was driving home, I was listening to the Sports Cage, and they had Dave Thomas on, the voice of the Riders, and he said that it seems like because this is a home and home, that Corey Mace doesn't feel like they need to do as much physical practice for this week, because they did that last week. And so it seems like he's taking more of a mental approach to at least to the early week. So I'm not too sure about how that injury report is going to be, how accurate it is. But at the same time, it looks like the Riders dodged a couple bullets on the receiving end, because Sean Bain seems to be okay. And same with Garrett Stearns. He got back into the game after what looked like a gnarly hyperextension of his knee. So, yes, injuries are a concern on the in the O-line there. But I thought when Sevier got in there, he looked better than he did the week before when he got in there against the Elks. And they do have a few O-line kicking around on the practice roster. So it'll be interesting to see who they bring up to replace, for sure, Blake. We'll see if they have to bring another one up for one of the others, though.
I want to know about the defense. There was several adjustments last week that didn't really work against Hamilton. No. So are they going to go back. Like, those defensive adjustments, I mean, they won the game. And I don't know if you could call it because of the defense, though. Are there going to be more adjustments going into this game against the Ticats now that they're at home? Or are they going to try to get those guys communicating better and on the same page?
Well, I don't think Marcus Sayles could play any worse than he did this week here. He had a rough first game in the green and white, but they gotta, like, whether they had Dalkey off for discipline reasons or if he was nicked up, they gotta get Dalkey back in there because he is that physical player that Corey Mace wants to have on the field. And he took a dumb penalty, and so hopefully that he's back in the starting lineup this week. Lacombo played really well on the corner, but he didn't play very well in safety. So maybe having him back up and see what's going on there a little bit more while keeping Sayles in over there, I think that might be what they should do. Because, listen, Marcus Sayles didn't forget to be an all-star defensive back. He just has to get he knocked the rust off. He's learning the playbook. I expect a better game from him. But I don't know. As a defensive-minded head coach, the Riders are not playing great defense, so I'm sure that's got to be quite frustrating for Corey Mace. But that's also going to be a place that he's focusing on, I'm sure.
James Butler did not have a good game for the Ticats last week. They tried to get him involved. 12 carries, 27 yards. And he actually is a very good receiving back. So he was able to add 40 yards on 5 catches last week. So if you had him in fantasy, at least that kind of saved his day a little bit. So the Ticats are going to want to get that running game rolling as best they can against the Riders. But right now, Bo's playing good football. 380 yards. Last week, 3 touchdowns. There was an interception in there, but again, that was off of Tim White that deflected it in the air, causing it to be intercepted at the end of the game on Sunday. But Shamar Bridges, he's intriguing to me. 6 catches last week, 72 yards at TD. Stephen Dunbar, 73 yards at TD. Keandre Smith, 119 yards and a TD. But the difference is, the Riders scoring 26 second half points. So Ticat fans looking at Mark Washington. And rematches are always intriguing. It's tough to beat a team twice in a row. But when the road team steals the first one, that makes the second one even, I think, more intriguing. And hey, Trevor Harris deserves his flowers. He had almost 400 yards last week. Didn't turn the ball over. 200-yard receivers in Jarrett Stearns and Kean Schaefer-Baker, and with Sean Bain Jr. coming back. He looks like he's poised to have a massive season for the Riders. When he's on the field, Harris looks his way a lot. So the Ticats are going to have their hands full with him. How do they get to the quarterback? And it's hard to get to Trevor Harris fast enough before he gets rid of that ball. But I will say, man, Adjo, he came in. He had himself a nice second half. I want to see more of that guy on the field for Saskatchewan.
I do too. Like, I think they have a lot of good Canadian receivers, so maybe they can swap them around with starting. Like, have Picton start a game, have a Joe start a game, so that he can build up his level of confidence and get him in there more. But yeah, he looked dynamic, and he just looked like a playmaker. Even in preseason, he had that one catch and run and celebrating getting in the end zone, which, calm down on that in the preseason. But he just looks crazy. And then if anyone has a chance, I got sent this in an email. I haven't quite read it all yet, but there was a really, really long write-up on Ajuajo on the TSN on TSN or CFL.ca. I'm not sure where it is. I'll find it and I'll tweet it out. But it's what a story for that guy. It's amazing.
Week 3 of the CFL season is here. I'm going to hit you with my fantasy lineup. You can join us. We got the 2 and Out League at thegamezone.cfl.ca. We'll leave the link in the description if you want to join us for fantasy football. I had a horrible week 1 and a good week 2. So hopefully I can continue with the good week 2. I think we were the opposite. You were good in week 1 and bad in week 2. So
correct.
My quarterback is Bo Levi Mitchell of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. My running back 1, Kadeem Carey of the Argos. Running back 2, Raquel Armstead of the Red Blacks. And I got Tim White as my WR1. Redemption is coming. WR2, Justin Hardy of the Red Blacks. They were looking his way a lot last week. It's hard to take him out. I don't know. And then I got Geno Lewis in my flex. Like, I would take Tim White, Geno Lewis, Justin Hardy on my team any day. So I hope it works out in fantasy. But my defense is the Argos. I think they're going to give the Elks some fits. What does your fantasy lineup look like?
So I am rolling with Cam Dukes for my quarterback. And I'm pairing him with Kadeem Carey as my first running back. And then I got... this is my last week that I'm giving him before I pull him out. So I got AJ Ouellette again because I think he's going to have a really good game. But if he doesn't, he's going on by.
This is like your 25th week in a row.
He's not my captain this week, though.
Okay.
He's been demoted from the captaincy. But I think he's going to finally have a good game. And I have Justin McInnes, and I have Tyson Philpott, and my flex is Samuel Emulus because we've seen Sean Bain Jr. have a big game. We've seen Keane Chief Baker have a good game. We've seen Gareth Stearns be the second down guy, but now it's time for Sam Emulus to have that big game. And I got the Argos. I forgot Argos.
Week 3 CFL predictions has the Montreal Alouettes as 6.5-point favorites over the Ottawa REDBLACKS. The Bombers at home, 2.5-point favorites over the Lions. The hometown Argos are 5.5-point favorites over the Elks. And the Riders are 2.5-point favorites over the Ticats. So all the home teams are the favorites this week. And I'm going to be picking the Alouettes, the Bombers, the Argos, and the Ticats for the win on Sunday Night Football. Sheldon, who are your picks this week?
Montreal, Winnipeg, Toronto, and Saskatchewan.
Yeah, I'm in a pool where I have to rank them 4 through 1. And last week that Rider win was my 1, and this week that Ticat win is my 1. So we'll see what happens.
Am I in the same pool as you? Larry's pool?
You were. Oh. What? Who's Larry? No.
Well, I'm in a pool by Larry, and we do the exact same thing. So it's very interesting.
We are not in that pool together, but man, I would love to join you in a pool for 28-degree weather in Regina. Stay cool, man. And if you're, I guess, listening in Eastern Canada, stay cool because, man, it's crazy this week. In Alberta, we've been having frost warnings. Now in East, it's just sweaty and terrible. So, 2andout.ca, you can find our merch shop. You can go to the mailbag on there, and you can read Sheldon's power rankings. You can rate, review, and subscribe to 2 and Out on YouTube and your favorite podcatcher. Of course, we've got the Patreon. You can find the link to that as well. And I do want to give a shout out to Simon Cardinal, who is a Bomber fan living in Ottawa, so we got to see the Bombers lose in the pouring rain last week. Now, a couple of weeks ago, the REDBLACKS revealing the John Gott sort of bobblehead action figure where he's crushing the beer, that classic CFL celebration. Well, you put it out on the pod, and Simon went to TD Place in Ottawa and bought me a John Gott action figure, has shipped it to me in Alberta. So, Simon, you were so kind. You went above and beyond. I thank you so much for this. I can't wait to receive this in the mail, and he'll be living on the desk behind me. So, Simon, I really appreciate you doing that. That was so kind, and I can't wait to have the John Gott action figure in my hands. The 2 and Out community remains the best. So thank you so much, and please enjoy week 3 of CFL football.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.